Welcome to Faithful Doubt. My name is Jordan. This week, we're going to talk about how faith can move mountains. So this week's question is from Sarah, and she asked, what is the difference between little faith and small faith in Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21? Great question, Sarah. This is, if you don't know this story, I encourage you to read it on your own. This story comes from the Gospel of Matthew, and it's about Jesus casting out a demon out of a boy. And what had happened beforehand was a father had brought his son to Jesus' disciples to cast this demon out, and the disciples could not do it. And they were perplexed as why they couldn't cast out this particular demon, considering they have in the past cast out demons. And so these disciples, the disciples of Jesus, they know that the power and the authority to cast out demons comes from Jesus. They know that. But do they really trust that? Do they really trust Jesus? That is kind of the ultimate question of this passage, because when the Father brings the Son to Jesus after the disciples fail, the disciples come to Jesus as well and say, we couldn't cast out the demon. Why is that? And Jesus' response to his disciples is one of frustration. And I imagine Jesus is just kind of getting tired of the disciples not getting it. They've been following him around for years, doing this ministry with Jesus, living with Jesus, seeing him perform miracle after miracle, doing great things. And here we are, sometimes they don't get it. And so Jesus is actually experiencing a little bit of frustration with the disciples. And so what he says is, the reason you couldn't do this is because of your unbelief. And that's why this question is such a good question, especially in terms of faithful doubt. You know, the whole point of what we're doing here is to explain that faith doesn't come without doubt, and the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is unbelief. And so, to really dive into what Jesus is saying here, it's important to go to the ancient Greek, which is what the Gospel of Matthew was written in, was the ancient Greek. And so the word that Jesus uses for unbelief is called allegapistos. And that is a combination of two words in the ancient Greek, which is allegos, which means low in quantity, and pistis, which is the word for faith in Greek. And so when you combine those, what Jesus is actually saying, you have little trust, you have little faith. You are not trusting in the authority and power that comes through me from the Father. And so that when the disciples hear that, I can only imagine what they were thinking. You know, well, what do you mean we have little faith? We do trust in you, and Jesus is saying, no, actually, you are relying on the amount of your faith. You are relying on the size of your faith rather than who your faith is in. And this happens all the time today. Christians focus too much on how much faith I have. How much faith implies quantity, not quality. And so Jesus' analogy of, if you even have faith the size of a mustard seed, which we know a mustard seed is extremely small. Well, if he's not talking about quantity, then why is he referencing a mustard seed? Well, you see, a mustard seed can actually give life, even though it's that tiny. And so Jesus is saying, it's not how much faith you have in the mustard seed, it's what the object of your faith is. And if the object of your faith is the mustard seed, or in this case, he's using a parable to say, if your faith is in God, the object of your faith should be the Father. It doesn't matter how much faith you have. If it's in God, God will do great things through you. You will be able to move mountains. Now, there's debate over is Jesus really referring to physical mountains in the world? There was an ancient kind of teaching amongst Jewish rabbis where they talked about moving mountains. And what we can gather from that is what Jesus is kind of talking about is your faith in God can move the mountains of your life. It can move. It can do great things because of who is the object of the faith, and that is the Father. So too often we get caught up on quantity of faith rather than the quality of faith. And Jesus is actually, the real question he's asking the disciples here is this. The issue isn't, are you full of faith? The question is, do you have any faith? Do you have any faith in God? Do we trust God at all? Do you trust God at all? Do you trust me, the Son of God, at all? So that's why the mustard seed analogy is so powerful, because it's pointing out that it isn't the size of your faith, it's the object of our faith. And our faith makes a difference not because it's so great, it makes a difference because God is so great. How does that apply to Christians today? I think a lot of people today, we get caught up and we must know everything, right? I must understand absolutely everything there is to know. If everything in the Bible isn't clear to me, if I don't have all the answers in the Bible, if there's things that seem to contradict themselves in Scripture, then I can't have any faith. And this is the whole point of faithful doubt. Is faith is not the absence of doubt. It is faith is something that we have in God despite our doubts. And the reason is, God, if you didn't have any doubt, if you had all the answers to life, if you had all the knowledge that you could ever have, why would we need God? Would we not be our own gods? What would be the point of faith? What would be the point of trusting in God? And so throughout Scripture, throughout every story in the Bible, this is often the theme, is people want to be the God of their own life. It starts with Adam and Eve, and it goes all the way through Scripture. And the whole time, God, the prophets, and Jesus ultimately say, no, there is one true God, and his name is Yahweh. And he knows what's best. He has all the answers. He's in control. He's all powerful. He's all knowing. He exists outside of all of time and space. He is the great I am. He is the Alpha, the Omega. And so if you want to have faith, put your trust in God. Don't put your trust in how much faith you have. I truly appreciate the question that Sarah gave this week. I think it deserves a longer conversation. So I would really encourage you to go ahead and comment below. Write your own thoughts and questions out on what you think this passage is saying. But ultimately, if I had to sum it up, Jesus is talking about the quality of our faith, not the quantity. And when he's talking about quality, he's talking about what is the object of your faith. Is it you? Is it this world? Or is it God? And if you want to continue this conversation, you're welcome to join our Facebook group, Faithful Doubt. Just go ahead and go to Facebook and search for us there. Or you can just listen to us on any of your favorite podcast platforms, or feel free to watch these videos on YouTube. I'll see you next time.